Human beings are the only life form that will do less than they possibly can. I want to dive into why. The other night I was walking the mountain trails here in Scottsdale, chasing a glimpse of the full moon. And as I moved along the path, something caught my eye. Just off trail, a cactus, one of many, this one sort of oddly shaped and leaning onto the path. Still, unmoving, glowing in the moonlight like it had been planted there on purpose, like it belonged exactly where it was. A miracle of a thing, really. Thrives on almost nothing. Very little rain, no softness, no luxury, just grit. Grit in adaptation. And I actually stood there a little longer than I expected to because something about it felt familiar, something resonated. Reasons I didn't really understand in the moment, it pulled me backwards, all the way to Florida. That feeling, hey, I traded palm trees for cacti. My mind went to the palm tree bending in the hurricane winds. Surviving not by toughness, but by surrender. Totally different world over there. Palm trees know when to yield. They learn the rhythm of the storm. They bend so far it looks like breaking, but somehow it never does. Two completely different environments. Two completely different survival strategies. Both beautiful. Both necessary. And somewhere between that cactus and those palm trees, I realized humans are the only creatures on Earth that can adapt to environments that slowly destroy them and call it normal. A cactus in a swamp would rot. A palm tree left alone in the desert without irrigation would dehydrate and starve. No, they couldn't debate it or rationalize it. They wouldn't try and tough it out. But I think their biological components would figure out pretty quickly this is not where I'm meant to grow. But people, we stay. We adapt until we forget we're adapting. And the irony is, we are the only ones who can stand up, pack our things, and walk away. Still, we don't. We bend for approval. We dry out in love that never waters us. We sit in jobs that hollow us out slowly, quietly, 1 year at a time. We fold ourselves smaller to fit inside rooms we've already spiritually outgrown. We survive in places our souls were never meant to live. And then we call it strength. Because we've gotten so good at enduring what we were never meant to accept. But I don't think strength is just endurance. Strength isn't just surviving. Strength isn't white-knuckling your way through a life that feels wrong in your body. Strength is choosing the right environment. Strength is knowing when your soul is in drought. Strength is realizing you've been bending so long you don't remember what standing tall feels like. Strength is recognizing when you've adapted out of habit, not alignment. Because here's the truth most of us don't want to face. Some of us are not broken, we're just planted in the wrong soil. Some of us don't need more discipline per se, or motivation, or another pep talk. We need a change of environment. And we can gift ourselves that any moment of any day. And that cactus reiterated that night. Life can thrive in the harshest conditions, but only when it's in the environment it was designed for. The palm tree taught me something too. Flexibility is wisdom, but only in winds it's meant to withstand. And somewhere on that trail, moon rising, desert quiet settling back in, I realized something important. This year wasn't just about what I survived. It was about learning where I actually thrive. And maybe that's the invitation for all of us as the year comes to a close. Look honestly at the places where you've been merely surviving. Look at the environments you've contorted yourself to fit into, the relationships that require you to shrink, the routines that drain you, the expectations that feel heavier every time you pick them up. Look at the roles that ask you to bend so far you're starting to crack. And ask yourself the questions that change everything. Is this my desert or just my drought? Is this my storm or just my surrender? Because you don't have to thrive everywhere. In fact, you're not meant to. You're not weak for outgrowing places. You're not selfish for choosing alignment. You're not failing because something that once fit no longer does. You're meant to find where your roots go deep, where you're nourished, where you can grow tall without apologizing for the space you take up. You're meant for an environment that brings you back to life. One that reminds you of your potential. One that doesn't just keep you alive, but makes you magnificent. Never forget the difference between you and a tree is that you can move. You can find that place that lights you up. What's up, guys? Eddie here. And before we jump into the next chapter, just a quick note. So, as many of you know, every single video that I've ever put on this channel has been created with the intent of building momentum in your life. If you want something physical to anchor that momentum, we've created the brand AGNS, or Always Grateful, Never Satisfied, for that exact reason. It's athletic apparel that embodies the very ideas and concepts I talk about every day. Because you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, we've created a code for this exclusive community, YWW20. You can use that on the website, agns.lifestyle, or right under this video on YouTube. All the stuff is there in the shop. Again, code YWW20 gets you 20% off the entire store. It's a great way to support the channel and also elevate your journey. Let it be a reminder to keep showing up. Appreciate your time. Always grateful, never satisfied. On to the next. It's time to resurrect the hero. Now, this resurrection is about no longer avoiding darkness and instead going into the darkness, confronting it and emerging with a deeper sense of self. It is that death and rebirth. Not literal, of course, but psychological, spiritual. Carl Jung famously said, "The hero's main feat is to overcome the monster of darkness." It's the long hoped for and expected triumph of consciousness over the unconscious. I want you to imagine this. There's a story about a samurai who was sent off to slay a mighty beast. Rumors around the town all speculated that this beast was ruthless. He was towering. That no one had ever entered the beast's cave and returned. So the samurai mentally prepared. He said goodbye to his loved ones. He packed his sword and set out on the journey. Across rivers, over mountains, through storms, he battled exhaustion, fear, doubt. And then he finally reached the mouth of this cave. And before stepping in, he kind of peered in at the darkness. Nothing. Moved in, one step at a time, slowly. There was no roar, no shaking earth, no snarling teeth. Only silence and a mirror. No monster, just a reflection. It turns out there was never a beast out there. It was the shadows within him. His anger, his grief, pride, fear. And in that moment, he realized this battle could not be won with the sword. This battle demanded truth. And that's what we miss, isn't it? We prepare to fight the world thinking it's the external that breaks us. It's the critics, it's the failure, the loss. But often, what defeats us lives inside us. The resurrection of the hero doesn't begin with applause, it begins with awareness. With the courage to look inward, to confront what we've buried, to sit eye to eye with our own demons, and choose to rise anyway. I'll never forget hearing Admiral McRaven say that it is in our darkest moments we must be our very best. I found it moving, almost to the point of tears, and I guess after spending some time thinking about it, I realized I felt that way because buried beneath his quote is the implication that we can, that strength in such moments is required, that when we feel like the world is too heavy, we are capable of being more than we've ever been. How powerful a thought. And so the question is, are you willing to face it? To look the monsters in the eye and say, I can rise above. X, Y, Z has been holding me down, and I'm going to dismantle the entire thing, false narrative by false narrative. I am worthy. I can get what they have. I do owe myself greatness. I can keep promises that I make to myself. I can measure up to my own ideals. The only question is whether you're willing to look right into that reflection. To stop projecting out at the world and seeking imaginary monsters outside the cave. Nothing external is an adversary. In fact, I'd go as far as to say we are confusing adversaries for mere variables and minor details. You're not your past. You're not old stories. You're not your excuses. You're not what's being said about you. You are what the reflection staring back allows you to be. You are the strength buried beneath those shadows, so long as you face them, so long as you immerse yourself into them. It's time to resurrect that hero, to stop running from your own potential and step right into the chaos, to point the compass directly at the storm so that you can become the person capable of weathering it. Most will run away. Most will let the best of themselves fade to black, dissipate into the sands of time. But you, in this moment, can resurrect the hero. No magic, no tricks, no miracles, but simply by knowing it already exists within you. Knowing that the two eyes staring back in the mirror are begging you for courage, pleading that you start this journey of a lifetime. So no matter how heavy the world feels, no matter how impossible the road ahead seems, don't turn back. Don't wait. Resurrect the hero. You were brave once. Don't let that be the end of your story. You can't live off the echoes of yesterday's courage because, newsflash, life doesn't care who you were. Only asks, who are you now? You can see the applause fades. The milestones blur. And what once felt like a ceiling, that's now your floor, your normal, your baseline. It's not failure. It's not regression. It's just life. Calling for your next evolution, asking for that next version of you. And the truth is, you can't answer tomorrow's questions with yesterday's answers. As brave and courageous and remarkable as they were, you've grown too much, seen too much, you've become too much. So now what? Well, I've been thinking about it lately. Out here in the desert, surrounded by silence and space, I find myself reflecting on moments that shaped me. Moments that demanded everything. At least everything I had at the time. Leaving behind safety for the unknown, heart pounding, hand shaking, but walking away. Not knowing what would happen, but just the feeling that something had to. Or speaking my truth when silence would have been easier. The moment I stood tall when I had every reason to fold. Those were everything to me at the time. Those were battles that built my backbone, and yeah, you bet I'm proud of them. But here's what I've come to understand. If I only celebrate who I was, I'll never become who I'm supposed to be. I don't want to be a monument to my past. I want to be a movement towards my future, and so here I sit. Not because I'm done, but because I'm beginning. Reflection is powerful, but I think only if it fuels motion. Because you can reminisce or you can rise, but you can't do both forever. So let me ask you something. What did you once do that scared the hell out of you? What moment did you walk through the fire? Speak up when your voice shook. Leap when there was no net. That version of you, they didn't wait for perfect. Didn't ask permission, just moved anyway. So, what are you waiting for now? Why are you holding on to yesterday's risk as though it bought you a lifetime exemption from discomfort? It just doesn't work like that. Life's not impressed by what you did last year. It's not clapping for last month's bravery, last year's courage. It's staring at you now, asking what's next. And maybe that's what courage really is. Maybe that's all it is. Not a one-time act, but a daily decision to let go of who you were. To make room for who you can be now. To build again, risk again, believe again. And I get it, right? Maybe you're tired. Maybe you thought you were past the hard part. But what if the hard part is the best part? What if this next climb is the one that reveals who you really are? I don't think you came this far to pause. I think you came this far to break through. So no, don't hang your hat on previous courage. Hang it on the hook of possibility. The world doesn't need a 2020 version of you. It needs this version, right here, now. The one who's seen more, felt more, survived more. Every single day up to now, to be exact. The version of you with scars and stories and fire still left to give. Remember, you were brave once. You can be brave again. perhaps it's time to prove it. You can let the world break you, or you can let it build you. See, I've learned something along the way. That pain can become power, fear can become fuel, and rejection, if you're willing to look it in the eye, can become the spark that ignites a new beginning entirely. The caveat is that it only happens, though, if you stop seeing your setbacks as the end and you start seeing them as the beginning of something bigger. There's an old story or anecdote that, I guess in its beautiful simplicity, has stuck with me, right? In this story, a farmer's donkey falls into a deep, dry well. And obviously it's stuck down there, and the donkey's crying and yelling, and hours pass, and the farmer becomes aware, and he's doing everything he can to get his donkey out of the well, but it's just too deep, and he's too far down there. And eventually, with no way out, the farmer has to make an awful decision, the hardest decision he could make. And he begins to shovel dirt into the well, thinking, well, I don't want him to suffer, right? So it's time to put the donkey to rest. But as he's doing this, something strange happens, right? As the dirt falls down the well and on the donkey's back, the donkey doesn't lay down to die. It shakes off the dirt and each time kind of steps up a little bit. Shovelful after shovelful. He continues to shake off the dirt and step up. The very thing meant to bury the donkey became the platform it climbed. Until eventually the donkey walked right out of the well. And see, I've been that donkey. Maybe you have too. I've had people walk away when I needed them most. And that probably hurts more than anything else. I've heard, "You're not good enough," more times than I could count. Sometimes from others, sometimes from, myself. I've stared down rejection letters, empty rooms, silent phones. I've spent months and months and months on projects that I thought would change the world, and newsflash, they didn't. And for a while, I believed that metaphorical dirt. I believed the labels, the silence, the fear. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking why me and started saying, watch me. Maybe that adversity is not the end. Maybe it's an opportunity to turn whispers of doubt into battle cries, to use the heartbreak as a blueprint for strength. What if it's letting the weight of the world fall on our backs and then standing up anyway? Not because we're ready, but because staying down is no longer an option. And see, in your world, you may feel buried, under stress, under failure, maybe under someone else's expectations. You might be carrying that heartbreak, anxiety, that fear of not being enough. But hear me. That pain wasn't sent to break you. It was sent to reveal you. You're not what was said about you. You're not the job you didn't get. You're not the love that left. You're not the voice that says you can't. You are the one standing in the well, and yes, the dirt is falling. But you get to choose what to do with it. Shake it off. Stand up. Every shovel of pain, use it. Every bit of rejection, rise through it. Every storm you didn't think you could survive, let it push you higher. Because maybe you weren't meant to stay comfortable. Maybe you weren't meant to avoid the fall. Maybe the darkness you feel right now is just the bottom of that well. But the climb, that's the magic. That's where you become who you were meant to be. And so, all I ask is this. Next time life's chaos, that metaphorical dirt, showers down upon you, find perspective. Shake it off, step up, and remember, the well is not your grave. It's your starting line. You don't become who you're meant to be in the spotlight. You become that person in the dark while the world sleeps. As a kid, I remember never wanting to go to bed. I wasn't tired. Not in the way they said I should be. While the lights dimmed and the world quieted down, something in me lit up. A curiosity. The same curiosity I sense most of us dealt with. That feeling that life didn't just stop because it got dark. That something was still happening. And I didn't want to miss it. I'd stare at the ceiling, ears tuned to the hum of the world outside, every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of wind through the trees. Just reminded me things were happening, were moving, that life was going on all around me. What if a new idea floated by in the night? What if an adventure passed me while I slept? What if the thing I was meant to see or become only showed up once the world stopped watching? And so, for as long as I could, I stayed up. Not out of rebellion, but because I felt like I was reaching for something no one else could see. I think even as kids, we understand. Some people dream with their eyes closed. Others dream with them open. And so while the world slept, I stayed awake. But then some time passes. We grow up. Somewhere along the way, the magic they told you to chase becomes the very thing they urge you to forget. You trade wonder for a resume. You forfeit imagination for a schedule. You're taught that fitting in is wisdom. Dreaming beyond the blueprint, it's foolish. There's no utility for it. And just like that, the same world that once read you bedtime stories now hands you a manual titled, "This is how it's done." I think a lot of us come to accept it. Close our eyes without question, fall asleep in the middle of our own lives, living by default, drifting through job we hate after job we hate, numbing with ache and distraction, mistaking comfort for meaning. For a while, I even went down that road. But eventually, I couldn't. I couldn't unsee what I knew as a child. I couldn't pretend the fire inside me wasn't real. And so I walked away, not because I was lost, but because I knew exactly what I was after. The next chapter was locking myself in rooms surrounded by notebooks, silence, laptops, and stubborn hope. I wrote, I reworked, I tore it down and built again and again. I dreamt with calloused hands and tired eyes. Not for applause. Believe it or not, there was none. Not for validation. There's very little of that as well. but because I refused to die with someone else's version of life in my chest. They told me to settle, to follow the rules, to make peace with good enough. But I was busy making war with mediocrity. So while the world slept, I stayed awake. What they don't tell you is that growth doesn't come once, it comes in cycles. Sometimes loud, abrupt, fast-paced, sometimes quiet, empty, barren. And every time you think you've arrived, life has this beautiful way of humbling you, of tearing you down just enough to rebuild something better. These are the seasons that feel like spring, hopeful, expansive, full of momentum. But it's the winters. It's the moments where nothing makes sense, where your progress feels like it's vanished, where your identity starts to slip through your fingers. I've lived both. I've stood on mountaintops. I've felt unstoppable. I've also curled up in the valley wondering if I had anything left. But that's the beauty of this life. We're not meant to stay the same. We're meant to be broken open, reshaped by hardship, made wiser by failure. And when those dark seasons arrive, when the warmth fades and the questions return, most people go back to sleep. They wait for that storm to pass. They close their eyes and they hope the world makes decisions for them. But I made that promise to myself to never outsource my future to chance, to never drift through another season waiting to be saved. And so I picked up the pen again. I lit the fire again, began the process again. While the world slept, I stayed awake.